The final specs of the iPhone 15, 15 Pro, and 15 Ultra have been revealed, and there are multiple weird things that Apple has never done before. And analysts are saying that the cameras are gonna be the stars of Apple's September 12th event, and that it could be a pivotal factor in getting people to upgrade. Now, each year I make a video comparing the new iPhone against the previous two generations, and the upgrades are always quite impressive. And to be honest, that is why I upgrade my wife's phone every year, just for the better photos so we can relive memories with our kids and have the best shots possible. But this year seems to be an even bigger update than usual. We have this full spec sheet right here, and I'm gonna start out with the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. With the iPhone 14, it pretty much inherited the 13 Pro's 12 megapixel main sensor, and that was a decent upgrade. It got larger, but the 15s are getting a 48 megapixel sensor, and that is a huge jump in resolution. 4 times the pixels. Now you might think it's the same camera that's in the 14 Pro, but that is not the case. We are looking at a 48 megapixel f1.6 aperture lens, which is actually faster, or it lets in more light than the one in the iPhone 14 Pro and the one that is coming in the iPhone 15 Pro, which is really weird. This is from Ming-Chi Kuo saying that it is not the IMX803 sensor from the 14 Pro and the 15 Pro, but a brand new one that is improved. This is using Sony's brand new 2-layer stacked CMOS technology, which is gonna improve the readout times, give you better dynamic range, and better quality overall. Now, the ultra-wide camera in the 15 and 15 Plus is not going to change. It's gonna stick with 12 megapixels, and same thing with the front. But why in the world is Apple using a brand new great sensor that is better technologically and has a f1.6 aperture compared to f1.78 in the 15 Pro? Typically, you have worse technology, older technology in the regular iPhone lineup. Well, it seems like this year Apple's taking a different focus on the Pro and the Ultra, and the iPhone 16 is gonna have an updated main sensor. Now, this might worry Pro buyers, but don't worry too much because Apple will not let this phone do a better job. The sensor on it is going to be smaller than the 48 megapixel on the 14 Pro and 15 Pro. If we look at this example right here, the 15 and 15 Plus is gonna be somewhere in between these two sensors. So larger than the 13 Pro and the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus, but not as large as the 14 Pros. But the sensor size doesn't matter a ton when you have improved technology with better low light already. What Apple is likely gonna do is not allow it to save 48 megapixel images, but only capture them and bin them down to 12. This is what happens with the iPhone 14 Pro most of the time, unless you go and enable Apple Pro RAW. And as you guys could see, the difference in quality is staggering if you don't use that Pro RAW feature, and the regular iPhones never get Pro RAW at all. So you will not have the option to be able to do that. That means that you're not gonna get the full insane detail from that sensor, and you could still have artifacts in the image from that extra compression. So even though the camera is gonna be a good improvement, especially for cropping photos, since we don't have a telephoto lens in there, you will not get such drastic differences like we see in this shot, not being able to save in 48 megapixel. Now, the next weird thing has to do with the 15 Pro and the 15 Ultra. We already talked about the main sensor staying the same, but the telephoto sensor, we have a 12.7 megapixel f2.8 aperture. Now, this is a new sensor, and that is great because we've actually had the same 3x lens over many Pro models with just software tweaks. So this is gonna be an update, and it's weird that they're bumping it up to 12.7. And the same sensor is gonna be used on the Ultra, but in a different way. Now, as far as the ultra wide, that is jumping to a 13.4 megapixel sensor, which is also very weird. Apple stuck with 12 megapixel sensors for a very long time, and now we're getting a bump, but a very minor one. So that ultrawide is gonna get better quality, and it's weird that Apple is no longer keeping the sensors the same. So on this 15 Pro, we're gonna have a 12 in the front, then you have a 12.7, a 13.4, and then a 48, all completely different, more like what you see on Android phones. Now for the 15 Pro Max or the 15 Ultra, we are getting a periscope lens, and this is the most exciting part. For way too long have Android Zoom photos looked a lot better than the iPhone. Android phones have been using these kind of lenses for a number of years, and it just works really, really well. But the iPhone's gonna be better. It's gonna one-up most Android phones because it's gonna have an optical zoom that most phones do not have, which means that it can be a 3x for those times where you want to get zoomed in but not too close, and then it can zoom out to say 6x to get you twice as close without ruining quality like a real camera's zoom lens does. Now, one of the Sony's, a very high and expensive one, has a lens like this, and it is super cool. This gives you the best of both worlds with a ton of flexibility without losing quality, whereas on a lot of Android phones, for example, the latest Pixel Pro, you can do 5x, but if you choose to go 4.5, well, it has to crop from the main sensor and the quality looks a lot worse. And some of the Samsungs were limited as well, where if you're not doing the full zoom, well, it just looks really bad. And this is a really great solution to that, allowing you to zoom in a ton, but also get really, really good quality and still not have to zoom a lot. So we can go from the 48 megapixel, which can also do the 2x crop, which I personally love, and then you can have 3x all the way up to 6x, and it's just gonna be awesome to have that capability. And then looking at that leak again, we have an f2.8 aperture, which is a lot better than some of the Androids that are on the market. Now, what else could Apple do to make the camera better and make it such a big part of the show other than a really nice zoom lens that not everybody cares about? Well, we had leaks previously about the 14 Pro getting 8K video, but that never happened, even though that sensor with 48 megapixels can technically do it, and Samsung has been giving us 8K for many years. Well, with the A17, the better efficiency, Apple could easily give us 8K that would rival Samsung's 8K, which they've had for many generations. And when it first came out with very slow processors, well, it didn't look great, but over the years they've made it better, and the 8K in the S23 Ultra looks really, really good, still with a much weaker processor than even the A16. Now, I believe that could happen because they're now upping the base storage to 256, and that means people will be able to fit those videos there. And then with that, the other thing that they could do is default the 48 megapixel main sensor to actually save in HEIC or HEIF format to get the full quality. I showed you guys how the file sizes are massive shooting in ProRAW, so I would go and I would convert the files myself to make them smaller and not take up a crazy amount of space. And this has been a huge annoyance with the iPhone 14 Pro, but with that extra storage and with the 15 and 15 Plus getting 48 megapixels as far as the sensor, if they allow us to natively shoot at 48 megapixel compressed without those massive files, that would be a nice boost in quality, even though they are using the same sensor. So let me know what you guys think about the full camera specs. Which one are you gonna buy if you're gonna buy a new iPhone 15? And do you wanna have 8K video capability like Samsung has been giving us? Go ahead and click that circle above to subscribe. Check out one of those great videos right over there. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next one.